Hi, I'm Allie. Join me as I show you how to make these vintage popping pearl earrings, which give a lot of details into some good foundational steps that you can build upon, make into necklaces, earrings, bracelets, and make sure you watch till the end to learn how to go over the wire guard as well too. Remember, if you need any materials, go ahead and look below the video in the description for any of those links to get back to our site that you can gather everything up. Go ahead and get your bead on it board, your materials, and let's get started. To do this poised pearl earring, we're going to be using a couple different techniques, and I hope that through these different techniques, you will be able to get some ideas too, not just for this design, but for others as well. To begin, we have some 6mm pearls, 4mm pearls, 11s, and 15s, along with a wire guard. I have some size 6 dragon thread, and this is in the white color. The first thing I'm going to do is pick up one of my pearl beads, and I'm just holding the end of the thread here, and I'm going to pick up an 11-0 after that. I'm going back down through the pearl, giving a nice tight pull so I don't have a lot of extra thread, just enough to tie onto. I'm going to add another 11-0 seed bead and go back up through the pearl again. What this does is positions pearls or seed beads on either side of the pearl there. And that gives us kind of little barbells to attach or to grip onto. From here, we're going to go back through that first 11-0, and it doesn't really matter which way you're going, to the right or the left, and we're going to encapsulate our pearl with some seed beads on the outer edge. I'm going to be using a total of 7 of my 11-0 pearls. And then after those 7 of those 11-0 beads, rather than pearls, are on, I'm going to the opposite side, and I'm going to go through the 11-0 seed bead that sits to the opposite direction. From here, what we're going to do is actually add a little bit of a little square stitch bead on. I'm going to take one of my 11-0s. I'm going to go back through the 11 that the thread is currently coming out of, and that's just going to position that bead there for later on. See how it just kind of acts almost like a little tail. From here, 7 more beads go on. And then back up to the top, back to that first bead there, sewing through that first bead. And as we sew through that first bead and bring our thread around, you can see a nice tight pull that fits perfectly around the pearl. From here, we're going to do the same thing that we did to the bottom, adding a little bit of a bead there. And we're going to sew through that bead and let that hang out at the top after we add just that little tail there. So to step 1, you could also, if you wanted to, do a whole bracelet in this design. This can be a connector to many other designs and drops hanging down earrings as well. Stay tuned too as we go in now and we do a little drop down here from the center. We'll come back and do our wire guard as we finish up the earring and bring it back to go in and close off. What we're going to do here is you can see 1, 2, 3, and 4 long basically of our 11-0s. So here's 1 and 2 that sits right above it. We're going to go back through that second bead that you just added. And we're going to grab another one, going back into the opposite side of the bead your thread was just coming out of. Go back through the bead you just came through in a ladder stitch style. That gets 1, 2, 3 beads connected right there. And we're going to add a 4th. Adding a bead, sewing into the opposite side of the bead our thread is currently coming out of. And coming out our bead there at the bottom. And you can see that ladder stitches 1, 2, 3, and 4 of our 11-0 seed beads together. As those 4 11-0 seed beads are stitched together, we're going to go in and add another pearl just like we did here on the top. I wanted to add and show this first in case you just want to add the drop of the pearls and continue making a cascade. From here, we're going to pick up one of our 4mm pearls, and right after the pearl, go ahead and pick up one of your 11-0 seed beads. Drop that down onto that line of beads here, going back up through the pearl, that 4mm pearl there. And as you go back up through that 4mm pearl and bring your needle and thread out, that bead almost acts as a stop bead. You're going to push that up next to the bead that your thread is currently coming out of. And whichever side your thread is coming out of that 11 seed bead, sew into the opposite side. So my thread is going here on the right, or on the left side rather, going through the bead. So I'm going to go from the right back over to the left. Just like we did on the top, we're going to encase around here 6 of our 15 O's to go along from the upper bead to the lower bead. So this time we're picking up 6 of our 15s. And just like we did on the top bead here, sew from 1 11-0 coming out one side into the bottom 11-0. Pick up 6 more. And go back through the top as well. So now I want to put this down just so you can see that this is a pretty earring that you can keep going and cascading down as you work. What I'm going to show now how to do is to add some extra pearls around the outer edge, but feel free to cascade and drop down. This would even be pretty with an 8, then a 6, then a 4 as well. Make sure to post your comments if you did so, what your seed bead counts are around those to help out other beaders, and also post your pictures in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. From here, we're going to go back up to the second drop, or the second 11-0 there underneath our original pearl. To do so, I'm going to go back up through that ladder stitch, going from my first 11-0 closest to the 4mm, sewing through the second, going from the second into that third. And the third one here is where we're going to build onto and add on our other 4 and 6mm pearls. We're going to be using 6 of our 4s and 3 of our 6s to drop down using some 15 O's in between each. Once you have on your piece here your 15 and then your 3 11s with a 15 between each, your 3 6s with a 15 between each, and then your ending on a 15, you're going to come back through that first bead there that your thread is currently coming out of. Give a nice tight pull, and that gets your first little drop. You can see you don't have to add any seed beads and do that floral arrangement if you want to. You can keep it nice and simple like this. That's what I like about this technique, is it shows you a bunch of different ways. What we are going to do though is go through the 15, down through the pearls and the 15, the whole way down till we're coming out the last 4mm pearl. Here what we're going to do is we are going to add an 11-0 between each one of our larger pearls. So we're going to add an 11-0, go through the 6mm pearl, give a nice tight pull. You don't want to see any extra thread. Add an 11-0, give a nice tight pull. It'll kind of sit right on top of the 15, and the 15 kind of goes and pinches to the back. Another 11-0, one more 11-0, and then into the last pearl. We're going to circle around here, back through then the 11-0 and the pearls, back through that middle 11-0 seed bead that's hanging down from the line as well, and then over to the opposite side. As we exit the opposite side, we are going to put some seed beads around our 4mm pearls and our 6mm pearls. Again, you don't have to do this. It's completely up to you what you do and don't want to do in this design. Going through the opposite side here, your thread and needle usually are just going to kind of pop out somewhere along the edge. I'm spinning it in my hand as I'm working with it. And where I want to come out on my piece is in the 15-0 prior to that last 4mm pearl. When I come out there, I'm going to start my little floral design on the outside of my beads. It's going to start with 1, 2, 3, and 4 of your 11-0s that are going to go into that 11 that's sitting between your beads. When you're around your 6mm pearls, 6 beads get added. And once those 6 beads get added, you go through again the next 11-0 seed bead. 6 more get added. So this is really simple. And again, this idea is just a basis for really a lot of other ideas. Go through that 11-0 seed bead, and see how you're getting that kind of florally cascade. 6 more beads get added into the last 11-0 seed bead, and then coming out that last 11-0 to go around the 4mm pearl. Easy to remember, 4 beads, and then up into the 15. At this point here, we're finished with this particular design, but there are so many different methods and ways that you can work through this, adding in more drops, adding in more seed beads around the edge. What we're going to do now is go up to the top here and add a wire guard. So here I am at the top, and I want to make sure I'm coming out through the 15-0. That's right after the 4mm pearl. I'm going to go through the 11-0 that's there as well, that middle bead. And as we exit the middle bead, we're going to be going back into that bead that sits right below the pearl that you attached that ladder stitch to. Once you're through there, it's time to go back up through the pearl, right like that. Once you're out through the pearl here, you're going to go through the 11-0 that sits as a connector, that first or that second one that you put on. You're going through the 11-0 that sits at the top of the bead. And here's where we're adding our wire guard. Now I'm adding my wire guard in a little bit of a different manner, just to show you that you can kind of jazz it up by adding beads at the top. So what we're going to do is we are going to add our wire guard here. I'm adding a gold one to match along with those Duracoat Muscat. And when I'm coming out the first little side there of my wire guard, I'm adding 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of my 11-0 seed or my 15-0 seed beads and coming back down the wire guard on the opposite side. What you'll notice is that decorates the top of the wire guard with beads. Now, word of caution, you just want to make sure that it is not pinching at all and that you don't have any extra thread showing or that it's jumping off at all. Go into the opposite side of your 11-0 seed bead that's there, and that pulls that right to the middle and just gives a little bit of that purpley pop to the top. I'm going to do the same thing one more time, going back through my wire guard. This time I'm not going to go through the beads. I'm just going to go down along the wire guard. If you go through the beads, you can do that too. Either way works, making sure my thread sits in that little U channel. Through the 11-0 seed bead that sits here at the top from the opposite direction. Through the 11-0 that sits below it. Down through the pearl underneath, and then out the back of the project. Coming out of the back of the project, you'll notice that your wire or your thread that you started with is, going to be right there at the top. You're going to reinforce one more time, back down through that 11-0, up through the pearl, and then since we're here at the back, you're going to take your 2 thread ends, grab right over left, left over right. And I love the simplicity of these and just how much you can do with the design and change up what you're making. From there, I'm going to take my thread zap or my thread burner, burn down the extra thread ends, burn them flat down towards the pearl, making sure I'm not burning the pearl or the coating that's on it. Flip them over. And I'm just going to grab my ear wires, open them up, stick them on, and finish these beautiful little popping pearl earrings. They give a really, really vintage look. And again, so many changes can be made. Thanks so much for joining me in these vintage popping pearl earrings. They're really fun again to get all of those foundational tools to wrap the beads around, to do your ladder stitch, and even to do that florally look on the outside. Remember, if you do need any materials, look below the video in the description. We'll put links there to get back to our website. If you haven't yet, subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. Thanks so much for watching and stay tuned for more inspirational designs.